Hello, Bristol. Welcome to another segment of the Best of Bristol. Today, we're meeting with John Miller, chair of the planning board here in town, and we're going to discuss the master plan. I keep hearing master plan, John, and I feel like this is something out of Star Wars with the evil empire.
No,
what is the master plan?
It's Pinky in the Brain all day long. Okay. Anyways, no, look at from a planning board perspective, we have three, what I've kind of like, as I'm explaining to people, three primary responsibilities. Responsibility one, and our top priority is planning, which the master plan is all about. Our second priority is cases. And if anybody's taken a look at any of our agendas, you'll see sometimes if somebody is doing something in town, looking to develop something, those are the cases. And then there are operational things that we do. But all of this does come back to planning. And as you reference the master plan, again, if you go onto Google, you Google Master Plan New Hampshire Planning Board, you'll see RSA 674:4, I believe it is. And there's a whole definition about the master plan and how it relates to our lives.
Now, Bristol has a master plan.
Yeah.
Is that available for the public to review?
Yeah. At all times, you can look on the town website under Planning Board. You'll see the master plan. You'll see the various sections that are in the master plan. Yeah.
So there's a state law regarding master plans. So are master plans required for all towns?
Yeah. So for any town looking to expend funds, you have to maintain your master plan. It has to be updated periodically. Periodically is I think the operative term. Last year, the planning board, we worked and we updated the vision statement. This year, we're working on the land use section. Of all of the sections in the master plan, you'll see things today that are in there, like for the historic district and whatnot. But there are really only two sections that by statute, the planning board has to maintain, and that is vision and land use. So those two are an absolute statutory must, and we have to do that regularly.
Now, when you talk about vision and land use, could you explain a little bit about, it's beginning to sound like this is a forward-looking document rather than a static document, like we're trying to actually develop a plan for the use of land and resources in Bristol. How does this read and work?
I think that's probably a really good description, right? Because it is very forward-looking. In the way that when you take a look at the master plan and you look at vision, it's a little bit of this is what we want to be when we grow up, right? So it's where are we trying to go as a community, and what's super interesting about the master plan process for me is to try and capture all of the various opinions and produce something that the community has a solid understanding of where we're trying to go. Now, what I mean by capture all of the opinions, I think everybody has seen the community survey that was sent out. We did it in 2022, where we surveyed the community and said, what do you think about housing? What do you think about parking in the downtown area? There was a lot of different questions in there. What do you think about technology and whatnot? That gives us a baseline of okay, here's the community's perspective on things that we need to be working on. And then the board takes that, and then we'll have very different conversations. We'll have some public hearings very specific to the vision section, which we had. We generally share that vision section with the various departments. And it's a process by which there's a lot of different input, and then the planning board's job is to sort of boil that down and go, okay, here's where we're trying to go.
So there's a distinction between zoning and master plan, and the difference, because it's starting to get a little confusing. Can you kind of separate the two for me?
So when you think about the land use section, that's really where zoning comes from. Zoning is in large part derived from what we say we need in the land use section. So for example, we're in the middle of doing our current land use section now, doing an update. In the statistics that we've been able to garner from, we've had a contractor working and also working with Lakes Region Planning Commission. It's been determined that Bristol over the next probably 10 years needs about 217 new housing, right? New residencies, 75 of which are expected to be rentals and things like that. So, why do I say that land use starts to govern zoning? Is because, okay, well, if that's what we need as a community, where does it go? How does it fit into town? What are we zoned for today? Do we need to make changes to zoning? Like, do we need to try to examine how much industrial we have? Or, the Economic Development Committee is working diligently on trying to bring more business to town, to have more job opportunities for people in town. Okay, well, where does that stuff go? Now, there are a bunch of things that are established today, but then is there stuff there that when it was first enacted, is it still appropriate? Does it need to be updated? I'll give you a couple of examples. Things like steep slopes. Okay, so our driveway requirement is, I believe it's like a 10% grade maximum for a driveway.
All right, now, I'm not an engineer here, John, so you're talking about slopes, so that means that there's an angle.
Yep.
And if I want to have a driveway and I have a house on a hill,
Yep.
I have to make sure that the driveway does not have an angle from flat that's greater than
10%, then greater than 10%.
Okay.
All right, so now when you consider steep slopes, and this steep slopes is definitely a subject that the planning board works on quite a bit. When you overlay in town how many slopes that we have that's greater than 15%, greater than 25%, then you can start to work backwards into, okay, well, where are there lots that are buildable? Where are there spots that, if somebody was building a property, or if somebody was renovating a property, the renovating portion, comes into it just from a conforming and not conforming perspective, because it does exist today. But again, it's all of this comes into play when you consider that land use and the whole master planning process.
So the master plan deals with where the community wants to go, what type of business or development we want to support or not support, but yet it's governed by state statutes. So there are some business types we can't prevent. And in other words, if Walmart wanted to come into town,
Yeah.
is that feasible, not feasible?
Well, I mean, so here's what it's not up to the planning board to try to say business A or business B. That's not in our purview. However, when you look at the community survey, by and large, and if you look at the past several community surveys, people want the look and feel of Bristol that we have today. Okay, so when you consider that, so that's a factor when you start to look at, okay, where do we have space, right? And then what kind of zoning, and then what types of business basically fit into those zones, right? So, by and large, I think the community would say to you, we want to favor more of the small business, and we want to favor, as appropriate as possible, we're favoring, I think, some of those types of businesses that are also retail, hospitality. I mean, you look at our downtown area, right? I mean, Walmart's not going into the middle of the downtown area kind of deal, right? So again, it's not up to the planning board to say bring this business or that business. But it is, I think, important for all of Bristol, not just the residents to be able to read the master plan to understand what we're working on and where we're trying to go. But I also think it's an incredibly important document that should help ground everybody, from the select board to the EDC to the Historic District Commission. Everybody should have a part of this process, because it's this document that governs where we say we're going. It's this document also, like, even when you consider the number of the number of property owners we have, not residents, the number of property owners that we have that they've bought and maybe owned in Bristol for a very long time. They can all participate in the community survey. They can't, because they're not residents here, they're not able to vote, say, on a zoning amendment or whatnot. But that's also a way that they can help be part of that process and be part of the Bristol community.
Now, if I go to the town website and I read the master plan, and I see
Trouble
something
sleeping?
I'm sorry?
Did you have trouble sleeping?
Well, we know that reading any legal document can be a challenge. But I'm looking at it as a taxpayer. If I go to that and say, gee, I've got some ideas, I want to know why they did that, or I think we could change something.
Yep.
How do I communicate that to the planning board, or where do I start?
In all honesty, the best way to start is to come to a planning board meeting. And you'll see we've made some changes recently. One of the things that we've changed is our agenda. And it seems simplistic, the fact that we've changed the agenda, but we're really trying to communicate the priority in which in what we're working on to the community. And what I mean by that is, when you take a look at the agenda, there's a line item specific to planning, there's a line item specific to cases, and there's a line item specific to operational concerns. And what are those three things? I've referenced them earlier in the discussion. The planning pieces is working on the master plan, right? So, it's also looking at even some zoning and what we do today to kind of update them and keep them up to, and recommendations, we try to update them. The cases is probably one that, especially during the summer months, is probably some of the busier times, because those are very specific things. A community member is coming in for a specific reason. We need to, hear them on whatever that case is. So that definitely takes up a significant amount of time. And then the operational pieces. So things like, we're working through right now where our commercially zoned areas, when the commercial zone was first put in, it's 200 feet from the center of the road on Lake Street into a property, which then puts certain lots in dual zones. That created an operational problem for the land use office. So we're working through now trying to get some of that stuff cleaned up, right?
So life becomes a little more complicated because of regulations, but the master plan can be amended, revised, and changed to reflect the vision of the community, the needs of the community, and I guess I can put it bluntly as master plan is what do we want to be when we grow up?
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
Okay, so best way to get involved is to start by reading the master plan on the town website, and then come to a planning board meeting, and those are held
Wednesday, second and fourth Wednesday of the month, 7 p.m. here at the town offices. And you can also attend via Zoom. Honestly, I encourage it, because I think if people, even if they came in via Zoom, we're still going to make sure we take take time to include them in the conversation. So whether you can get down here or you want to attend via Zoom, by all means participate.
Well, John, thank you. And thank you very much for your volunteer work as chair of the planning board. And Bristol, look for more information, because this is our community and we're always working to make Bristol better.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.